Outsourcing. The question of jobs seems to take center stage in every political election and debate. But what is outsourcing? How does it work? And is it the future of employment? Joining us today, a panel of experts to break down those questions and more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm your host, Sam Chen. Outsourcing. Seems like there's not a political election that goes by where you don't hear the term used. But what is it? From its 30,000-foot idea to how does it actually work and apply? What industries use it? And is that the future of employment? Tonight we're joined by a panel of experts to break down that question. Here in segment one, I'm pleased to introduce you to Manny Pena, the CEO and chairman of Pena4, and Ismael Arcelay, who's director of business development at Pena4, and also a business professor at a variety of local colleges here in the Lehigh Valley. Gentlemen, welcome to Face the Issues. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate both of you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. Let's just get right to it. This is a huge topic, like we said. In every election cycle, you hear politicians talking about it, and they throw the term outsourcing around a lot. It's a term that everyone knows and everyone's heard, but maybe not everyone knows what outsourcing is. So can we start there with a high level, 30,000-foot level kind of definition? What is outsourcing? And when we say that term, what do we mean by it? What takes place?
Well, outsourcing is really a company contracting services with another company to provide those services. I mean, that's technically the actual word of outsourcing. So we call it consulting. There's a lot of consulting. There's a lot of consulting companies out there that actually do work for others. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's based on their specialty, things that they can do better. When it comes to outsourcing, and I think in the context that we're trying to talk about today, which is actually with BPO, business processing outsourcing, probably around 30 plus years ago, and I believe that GE was one of the first ones that started this, especially in the case of India. It was actually providing experts in certain categories, but at a very reduced price of salary. Let's say, take for example, India. India has a very huge population of 1.3 million people.
Right.
And yet they have over 350 million people that are truly educated in English. Mm-hmm. Very low property, they're very poor. Mm-hmm. And they had a very hard time as far as trying to get out of the socialism that they were in and going into the capital, system. They just said, you know what, we have these resources here. We got to do something with them, and that's how this outsourcing truly began. Okay. And right now, it's probably in 9 different countries, 10 different countries that are doing outsourcing.
Okay. Let me ask, and Izzy, you also, you're director of business development at Pena4. You also teach business. Absolutely. So this is something where you are both practically seeing this on a day-to-day basis, but you also are well-versed in the theory and understanding how, and you teach this to your students. This is not just something that you do as a job. Let me ask you this: how does it work in logistically speaking, and in theory as well? We see that jobs get sent overseas in some cases. In other cases, to Manny alluded to, sometimes they're not sent overseas. Outsourcing is not necessarily just an international thing. How does it work? What's that process look like?
Well, part of the process, let's begin with how did this evolve and how did it become to where we're at. There's a lot of disruptive technologies that exist, right? That for business owners, there's so much competitive pressures on staying on target, making sure you meet your margins, right? And sometimes necessarily the tools, the skill sets are not available directly onshore or right here. So one of the things that outsourcers provide is a resource bank of those effective and efficient tools that come in the forms of skill sets that we may not be able to find. And outsourcing provides us the opportunity as an organization, as a business, to provide any entrepreneurial business type or existing businesses that may not have the ability to access those skills.
Sure. So it really broadens the horizon for these
Absolutely.
companies to say where they can find talent, where they can find people who have the skills that they need.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this, what kind of jobs are being outsourced today? Manny, you mentioned this is something that really started 30 years ago. Are we outsourcing the same kinds of jobs as we were 30 years ago, or has there been a change in that? What kind of jobs, you guys do, your company does this, what kind of jobs do you see really kind of use outsourcing as a mode?
Yeah, and that's also a very good question, because really the outsourcing BPO has evolved. When it began, really was actually the outsourcing company using the same tools that the company were using as far as their internal tools. As technology got better, so did also the outsourcing companies. They started creating their own tools.
Okay, fair enough.
So not only now do we provide, let's say, the resources, or the BPO companies provide the resources, but also this technology that is involved, where a lot of companies cannot even afford it.
Okay.
And I go back to really my own, or our own experience as far as a company, and this started in 2004. We had really we had 2 bids, and right one after the other, we lost it to an outsourcing company. And in this case was also in India.
Okay.
And that's when I saw the writing on the wall. Yet we had the personnel, of course, but that, and we were small at that time. And when you look at outsourcing, initially, like I was saying, it was more the body itself, but now the outsourcing companies have gotten a lot of technology in place that not only has it allowed companies to reduce their costs based on personnel, but since the efficiency is more, then you even need less of those.
Okay.
So that's it. The outsourcing piece for a company could be the difference between profit and loss.
So you're saying that a lot for outsourcing is changing in many ways, that a lot of different kinds of jobs are being outsourced now, where 30 years ago it might have been a specific set number of jobs, but that kind of job is expanding. But also with the introduction of new technologies and so forth, we're seeing actually the outsourcing work change as the further that we go. Now and you made the point, Manny, you said that about 15 years ago you made a bid, and you lost it and it got outsourced.
Right.
Is this, and this is kind of where a lot of people have this question, is this trend, do you think this is where business is moving increasingly toward some kind of outsourcing position?
Well, I would, let's just say, let's talk about the example as far as what happens in the commercial world, in department stores, the Walmarts of the world, right? All the actual manufacturing that's done, let's say in China, products. That alone actually created a domino effect in the industry, where you had to be very competitive, and you had to find a way to actually be competitive.
Right.
And the only way you can be competitive is trying to lower your costs by efficiencies, or by the actual cost of that manual labor. Okay. So it started a long time ago. But now it's really, these last 30 years has really hit the service industry. Where now you're talking about special, certain positions that if you're not doing client facing, therefore you can do it anywhere. So in other words, if you're doing it in this particular 4 walls,
right, and
you don't have to see a client, you can do it anywhere.
Right.
And I think what's happening is like a wave. Everybody gets a little bit sucked into it, and you have to do it in order to survive.
Right.
Here's another challenge that we have, and people don't realize this. 83% of all companies in the U.S., this is from the Census Bureau, 83% have less than 20 employees and making less than $1 million.
Wow. Wow,
That's
83% of companies in the U.S.
Right.
Wow. And
when you think about that, and I would like to state that's something different that we're doing. A lot of the outsourcing company and BPO companies, they really just work with big companies.
Sure.
How many people do you need? 20, 50, 100, 200, 1,000. We decided to take a different mission. We'll take those too. But we decided to really work with small businesses.
Sure.
What's the biggest challenge? financing. Even today, our company at our size, we only get enough financing for 1 or 2 months from banks.
Sure.
Banks are not lending
Right.
money to companies. They're not. You got to find other means. You got to find investors. You got to sell a piece of your company. A lot of them are selling their companies. Small businesses have no option a lot of times in selling their companies to bigger companies.
Right. You see this happen all the time.
All the time. And that should not be happening.
Okay. So, well, I mean, this makes sense. There's an economic demand that's driving the need for outsourcing in so many ways. Let me ask you this, especially with your company, you guys combine outsourcing with on-site staffing. There's a difference between the two, but what I'm gathering is that some jobs have different needs, and so sometimes outsourcing fits, and sometimes that on-site staffing idea fits. Question for both of you, both practically and in theory, what's the difference, and how do you decide what's the best fit for a company?
Well, that starts off with a conversation with a customer. Right? So when we meet with a customer to consult with them, it's not to generally just push a product on them, but rather to listen, what's going on. And in some cases, you get an entrepreneur, right? A new company, a new startup that may need something temporarily. I'm opening up another location. I need an HR person, but I already have one. But I need that one for 6 months until I get the second operation running. So in that case, that's where we will bring in feet on the ground, right? Near shore, and they will solve the situation. And after that need is met, you can get rid of that person. The brand doesn't have to, what do we do with this person now? But that person works for us is what we call leasing and staffing, right?
Okay.
Leasing of staff.
Yeah, the decision, let's say, between on-site and off-site, right, of a position, has to do more. A lot of companies need a lot of consulting.
Okay.
You know, to Izzy's point, right? They're starting off, and I'm talking about even big companies.
Sure.
And not just small, but especially small companies. You have mom and pop actually just running the business. They do their payroll, they do their finance, they do their client services.
They do everything.
They do everything.
Yeah, they wear every single hat.
And you should see, we talk to them and they slept only 3 hours. And it's so hard for them to also let it go.
Sure, sure.
You know, because again, they're looking at every penny.
Right.
So you know what, if my wife or my husband gets to do the work, we save money. The money stays within the household. You will be amazed as far as the P&Ls that we see, and we say, wait a minute, how are you surviving? They're not. A lot of them are not even submitting their tax returns on time, getting in trouble with the IRS. Because again, one thing is to have to receive the money, the other one is to be disciplined enough to say, you know what, this goes to taxes, this goes to, I have to keep on reserve, but you know what, I got to check, oh, no, I need this money, it becomes their capital.
Sure.
Instead of actually saying, you know what, let's put things into perspective where it belongs. I need to pay health care, I need to pay my taxes, and so forth. And that's one of the biggest issues, is a very big problem.
Yeah.
Another issue that we're facing, especially now today, is really the unemployment rate. We're pretty much as far as in full employment.
Yeah.
I believe it's 3.7% that we're at, which equals full employment. Anyone who's unemployed is because they're going through transition. Plus, we have 1.4 million jobs unemployed that do not have the skill sets to be able to do it.
Sure.
Do the job. And let me get backtrack. There's 1.4 million jobs where there is no positions available for it. And then within the unemployed, that's where you have other millions of people
Right.
that really do not have also the skill sets.
Right.
But at the same time, when you talk about full employment, this is not only a cost savings to companies, this is also a way of survival, because you still need those skill sets, whether it's onshore or offshore. But in most cases, unemployment has always been pretty high, and still companies, small companies, still need that leverage in order to save some money.
Right. both the outsourcing and the on-site staffing can provide solutions for that. And so
Absolutely.
that's great. Let's hold that thought right there. I want to come back to this conversation. This is a great conversation on outsourcing. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Manny, thank you again for being here. And Joe, I want to introduce you to our audience. You serve as the president and the COO of Pena4. And so let me actually start here with you. When we look at outsourcing, it's a lot of people ask what industries. Now I know Pena4 started out predominantly with healthcare, and that still makes up the bulk of what you do, I think. But you've also expanded to other industries. Talk to me a little bit about that world and how you guys got your start there.
Sure. Back in 1998, Manny opened the company. He saw a very specific need, mainly in medical coding. So medical coding, I'm not sure if you're aware, Sam, but it drives the revenue for hospitals, for physician offices, for ambulatory care centers, pretty much any healthcare organization. When you apply the codes, the diagnosis codes and the procedure codes, they either group to some type of payment methodology or they're paid by some other type of payment methodology. However, that's what drives the reimbursement.
Got it.
So without having enough coders in an organization, you can imagine it affects the bottom line, it affects cash flow, the AR, the unbilled, et cetera. So at the time, back in late 90s, I should say, 1998 and the early 2000s, there was about a 4 to 5,000 workforce shortage in medical coding. Couldn't find medical coders.
Okay.
So Manny knew that, Manny saw that, and we opened up a consulting company where we can tap into coders throughout the country. Back in 1998, in the early 2000s, medical records were paper-based.
That's right.
So you needed coders to be on site, literally in the hospital or in the medical practice, reading the medical record, and that's how you applied the codes. And there was literally thousands of codes to apply. So you needed a human being to do that at that time and somebody to be on site.
Sure.
So Manny opened up the company and found a way, one, to digitize medical records. So we were able to take paper medical record, transform it into an electronic image, and then host it on the servers that we had here in Allentown, actually, right on Hamilton Street.
Okay. Not far from here.
Not far from here. We had a server room and it was built to do that. And then we had tapped into coders throughout the country. Coders in Utah, in Nevada, Arizona, Midwest. And those coders were able to just work from their homes and work as a consultant. So they were full-time coders working full-time jobs during the day, coding for us at night.
Okay.
And that's where it was born. It was born right there, the concept of outsourcing medical coding. It was outsourcing it, but within the United States.
Right.
With the 4,000 to 5,000 coder shortage, there still wasn't enough resources out there. We were tapping into resources who already had jobs, and they were really burning the midnight oil to get the job done, the extra job done for us and for the hospitals, our clients. So in about 2013, the entire coding system, it was ICD-9, and the whole world was on ICD-10 for many years. The United States caught up, and we were moving to ICD-10. Went to 177,000 codes in total. We were projecting, and the whole entire industry was projecting, that it was the time that it takes to code one medical record would now be double the amount of time.
Wow. Okay.
Therefore, you needed twice the amount of coders.
Sure.
We already had a 4,000 to 5,000
Right.
workforce shortage in coders. So what were we going to do? I mean, honestly, the entire industry was scrambling. So hospitals did the very best in training coders. It takes about 2 to 3 years, Manny, right, to train a coder. We had a head start, again, because we saw this happening. We saw what was going to happen in the future, which was right upon us. So we had a plan to grow, develop 300 coders. Where could we do that? Where could we do it quickly, inexpensively as possible, and to be ready for that target date. The target date for ICD-10 go live was October 1st, 2013. Okay. Now the government postponed that 1 year and then an additional year.
Sure.
Kind of gave us
time. As the
time,
government always does.
as they always do, especially in healthcare. But we were able to have 300 coders ready.
Wow.
We helped every single one of our clients. We're talking large healthcare organizations, health systems like Johns Hopkins, Montefiore, NYU, Mount Sinai Health in New York, in New Jersey, Barnabas Health, out here, even St. Luke's at one point we were doing a lot of coding for. And we basically had the resources that nobody else had.
Yeah.
Of course, it trended, and other companies jumped on board, and everyone wanted to be a coder.
Sure.
So now there is, believe it or not, fast forward in 2019, there is a surplus of coders. However, they're not qualified, and that's the problem. So it became kind of like everything else, a trend, right? It's maybe a new job opportunity profession for younger college grads. So they went into coding. They learned, they took a crash course or certificate program. They didn't invest that time that's needed. And honestly, it's difficult. I will say, it's difficult to get that first break in coding.
Sure.
Just because you have a certificate doesn't mean that a hospital will hire you.
Right.
Our company would not hire you. You need to be a proficient coder because it's reimbursement, it's quality, it's patient care, continuity of care. There's a lot that goes into those medical codes. So we have actually a national coding contest throughout the country. We're on our fourth year now, where when IC10 went live, we wanted to kind of gauge the quality out there. So we have actually done that throughout the country. And believe it or not, the results are shocking. They're truly shocking on how poor the quality of medical coding is here in the United States. So, and I'll let Manny expound on that.
And Manny, as you do, let me ask you this too. There is, obviously you guys have expanded out of just the medical industry as your company. There is a lot of concern among people saying, well, outsourcing is just taking jobs that we want away, whether it's coding or the other industries you expanded to. Talk to me a little bit about how's your company expanded, what other industries are you into, and how do you respond then to people who say, well, hold on, I don't want you to take my job away. What's the benefit of outsourcing in your mind and from where you guys sit?
Yeah, and Sam, that's a very good question because that leads to the transition that we have done. Our focus, of course, was on healthcare. And just like Joe says, you're talking about very high-end, health systems out there, right? So we do very difficult work and we were very successful at it. Then come now to, especially last year, where you started seeing, again, unemployment being so low and not so many people out there. We looked at our entities, looked at our US and we looked at our India and so forth. And we said, you know what, we have all these people here, especially now in India, where we can also help these other companies because the biggest problem right now is really finding people. And so it's pretty much a lot of times you look at your business and there's different opportunities that you can do with different assets within that business. And that's what we did. We saw that the assets that we really had, we were very successful in actually making the transition in healthcare, which is one of the most difficult, right? And these are huge institutions, right? And then started looking at all these small companies. How are they going to do it? And that's how that actually started happening. We weren't doing it for the other industries, but we always did finance, HR, for our clients, for our, within healthcare, because they also needed that, and also for our back office. So in client services, we had really good people, and it says, wow, we can also help other companies now in other industries. Everybody needs HR, IT. Right. There's also a lot of voice enabling services. Everybody's doing surveys. So, I mean, it's incredible, right? Data is gold now. So we have those people. And that's how we did that transition. So it was, so last year we decided to say, you know what, we're going to be focusing on helping other companies in other industries because we have the experience. We have we got a very good leadership team here and over there, and we can do it. So that's how that evolved.
And how do you respond to someone who says, "Well, outsourcing is taking my job away"? What do you? I mean, when we weigh the advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing, how do you answer that? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, again, in today's world, where you have technically full employment, we're not really taking jobs away because again, there are so many. There's really unemployment is very low. There are jobs out there. But let's say outside of that, again, when you look at the companies, where you got 83% of companies making less than $1 million with 20 employees, banks are not helping. How do you help them actually grow? Because guess what? Anything that we get to do from offshore, that helps them actually have money to actually bring in people that they need to build their business. All we're doing is actually providing a foundation for them so they can actually do what they do best.
So you're changing the kind of employment, not necessarily getting rid of the employment.
Exactly.
If I can expound on that, we have one client here in the Lehigh Valley, about $1.5 million in revenue annually, but the potential to grow much beyond that. However, this person and his wife are literally doing all of the payroll, the scheduling, the IT work, the recruiting, the HR.
even some other billable hours.
Yeah.
And imagine trying to hire 5 different professionals
Sure.
to do those part-time jobs.
Right.
And it's, again, it's about flexing and being able to ramp up as you grow. We were able to help that person by assigning 1 FTE to handle all of those disparate responsibilities, HR, finance, IT, et cetera. And that freed him up to get out there on the road, do what he does best, and that's grow his business.
Grow his business.
And it's been very successful.
That's great. Thank you so much for those examples. Don't go away. We'll come right back after this. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Joe, Manny, thank you again for being here. Joe, let me close out asking you this. You guys also do a lot of charitable work. I want to kind of put the focus on that. We've got about 20 seconds here.
Okay.
Tell us briefly about the charitable work that you guys do.
Sure. For the past several years, we've been participating in the entire company. We get everybody together and we help out food banks and clothing drives, and we do about twice a year locally here in the Lehigh Valley.
That's great. I appreciate you guys do that, really investing back into the community. So thank you again both for being with us. My thanks to Manny, Joe, and Ismael for being here with us, talking about this incredibly important topic. But that is all the time we have tonight. So thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.